Okay, cool. Hi, guys. Welcome in. Welcome to Dinosaur Not Live. Hi, guys. Today is Thursday. I forget exactly the date. What is today's date? Let me get my stuff set up here. All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming in. My name is Christopher. Angela, who's usually here, will be joining in a few seconds, a couple minutes. Today has been a great day. We're talking about mitigating heat. What did I title this, actually? How chickens stay cool, the poultry thermoregulation system. It's been heat wave week. Guys, it's been 95 degrees up here. 95 with that, what is that, temperature variance to 100 and something. 105. Who's hopping in here? Let me check my iPad. Hey, Aquatic News Network. What's up, man? Thanks for coming in, bro. Hi, Taco and Katie. Hi, guys. I'm using like an iPad. I have this 2-bit hillbilly set up for transmitting here in my glorious studio. But this is very, very important. We did a brief video, Angela did, about her puffy chickens, her silky chickens, on keeping them cool during this heat. It's pretty serious. Unfortunately, we know some people who lost birds over the last week or so with the heat over the U.S. who, through social media and whatnot, that succumb to the heat, which is really sad because it's something that is avoidable. Okay, please pardon the car noises. I have the window open. So, we'll get started in a few minutes once she comes down. So today, I didn't know we were going to have her live. We had pretty good thunderstorm, knocked our electricity out and came back only about half an hour ago or so. But you got to get started. All right. New friends, anybody dropping into these lives wondering what's going on? My name's Chris. I am married to a nice little lady named Angela, and we have a homestead in southern Lancaster County in Pennsylvania where we raise a variety of critters. We have jumbo Coturnix quail. Angela raises her silky chickens. She breeds silky chickens, has been doing that for about 5 years. And personally, for us, nothing that we sell. We keep Muscovy ducks because they're really great for meat production. They grow pretty rapidly. Muscovy ducks, but they're very tame animals too. They're quite gentle, but I always say, man, these birds, they taste identical to beef, like a very fine cut of beef, although very lean because they are ground ducks. Hillbilly engineering is often better than mainstream. Yeah. Oh no, aquatic. The hot got a couple of your birds? Man, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that, bud. I'm not seeing for some reason, chat popping up on my phone, so I'm checking my iPad. Yeah, so our birds were hot, but we did some simple stuff to keep them cool. Actually, I'll talk about that once we get into this talk. Real quick, anybody new here, I always like to recommend you go steal the free stuff that I give away for free. That's actually really quality stuff. Down in the description of these videos, I usually have links to all of our educational stuff. We're very pro-education and knowledge. It's 2025. Knowledge is free. There's an abundance of it. But human beings, we seek path of least resistance. So it usually helps for some encouragement. So we do encourage people to nudge them into trying things that are new and showing them that they don't have to be all alone doing these things, that there is support, that there's a community of people who've been through trial and error and have had horrible stuff. I mean, when we started Angela's beloved silky chickens, we didn't predator-proof one of the hutches properly, and she went down, and like 5 of them were missing, their head parts. It was horrible. But we learn, and you have failure along the way. So definitely check out the material we have down there. We write it all. It's not copy and paste junk. It was a lot of research to do all that stuff. We like to share it. Okay, I just got into ducks. I have pigeon. Oh, cool. Chickens, parrots. Need to get peafowl again. I missed their calls. No, we haven't lost any birds. I keep them in an aviary. Okay, cool. We used to raise quail. May go back to them now that we're talking about getting a pelletizer and making our own feed. Oh, cool. We were thinking about getting a pelletizer. We do make our own feed, but we use a whole grain. We mix whole grain feed, and we didn't want to. We were going to do a pelletizer for the chick feed, but not thus yet. All right, cool. It is currently 5 minutes. I usually do like 5 minutes of rambling like this before I get started. And now we're into our live. So 5:27, 5 minutes, 30 seconds or so. All right, how chickens stay cool in the poultry thermoregulation system. All right, I'm going to give a very brief synopsis. Chickens regulate their body heat similarly to many other animals through evaporative cooling, evaporation to cool off. We humans, we sweat. I was talking to Angela before this. We make a mistake to think our cooling process is when we sweat. It may be like intuitive that, oh, we got water on our bodies. We're like splashing ourselves, cooling off, right? That's not what's really happening. You're cooling off as the evaporation occurs and the water is taking heat off your body. So we evaporate heat. We secrete water and it evaporates off, taking the heat away from our body. Now, chickens don't have sweat glands, so they're going to be respirating. They do respirate quite a lot. I guess if you guys have watched your birds in the heat, you may see them breathing quite a bit. Well, they're respirating expiring fluid, water, and they can dehydrate pretty quick, especially in the heat. Uh-oh. Yay! A nice lady just walked in, and she's also wearing a Hawaiian suit.
I thought,
Yeah.
it would be a good mix.
There's a nice lady I was talking about.
Hi, everyone.
Here's Angela. Hi, everybody. Okay, I just got started with this introduction talking about thermoregulation and birds not having sweat glands. All right, yeah, so chickens are homeothermic. They're going to have a stable body temperature, and their body temperatures actually are pretty high compared to what you might expect. They're about 104 to 107 degrees.
Yeah.
Do we ever take bird temperatures?
Do us personally?
Yeah, I think we really do bird
no.
temperatures. You can take bird temperatures. You have to do it with like the uncomfortable way with
Their rear end?
yeah. Oh, before I get started, I always have to give my disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about medical things and physiological things. However, this is not to be taken as veterinary or medical advice or any such of that. This is purely for entertainment, but it's good knowledge. So I do suggest any of the knowledge you gain here, you look into it further and investigate and verify. These people on the internet, you can't trust anybody. It's true. Like, and you know, but I try to do my best, and the information here is pretty sound. And we've been doing this for a while, and a lot of this stuff, I keep notes to keep track with you guys. If you have questions, drop them in the question box. I would love to hear questions you may have. Would you like to say anything? I was talking about, like, you'll notice the chicken's panting is very easy to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll probably notice them not as active, probably not eating if they have food.
Are we getting into that? Yeah. All right. So these birds do not have sweat glands. There's a trade-off. They're birds. They're built for flight. They're built for lightweight. They have hollow bones, so they're not sweating. So they have to pant. Now, one of the things you may notice in your birds is gular fluttering. This is the gular area in your birds. It's less hair. I mean, not hair.
Feather? I was going to say fur.
Less fur. Less chicken fur. As you can tell, I'm not a vet. There's less feathering here. All right. Why is that? So they can it's more flexible. So it's not heated up. It's not trapping heat. It's not insulating. And they can respirate. And you're going to see that, like that quick vibrating. There's musculature in there, and that's helping to do the evaporative cooling, to push fluid out and to get it out. Now that, when we look at that, we're going to have this, again, inherent or intuitively. We're assuming these birds, oh my God, my birds are croaking, dying. Look at them. They're panting like this. That's not good. That's actually normal. That gular fluttering, that fluttering they do, that's normal. They're trying to regulate their body heat. What is not normal, of course, is dehydrating. And that's the big issue with a lot of the heat concerns, is that the birds dehydrate very rapidly, and they can lose minerals quite rapidly. Their sodiums and electrolytes because of the mineral loss. And what's happening when they dehydrate rapidly and they're dehydrated is there's less blood in there for thermoregulation. And the blood's important for thermoregulation, which we're going to talk about later. the blood is very important, and that you have proper blood flow to assist in regulating their body temperature. All right, we want our chickens to be happy, and the main thing is give them plenty of water, and that they have access to water.
And shade.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we'll get into that too. So, what I was talking about with blood flow and why hydration and proper blood flow is important, you can discuss this, and because you talked about it in your puppy video.
We're talking about the one. Yeah, so for breeds, so a way that they can help regulate their body temperature, for example, is through their comb and their wattles, because that blood is flowing through. It's flowing to their face and the wattles.
Can you explain to them
the comb and wattles?
Can you tell the new chicken people, if there's new chicken people, what these parts are?
The comb. Well, so it just typically what people think of is the big combs, like the layer breeds, like the leghorn breeds, the ones that they flop over. But anyway, they're usually really big, and roosters tend to have the big wattles, but some hens can have some, like smaller,
jangly.
Yeah. And the blood flows, and even in the face, you'll see some breeds have like when it's warmer, their face looks more red, the skin, and it's because the blood is flowing to that area to be closer to the air, and that's helping to cool the blood as it rushes through there and cycles through. Now there are breeds like Silkies, for example, or Bantam, smaller breeds that they might not have these really big comb features. Silkies, for example, have like a small, what they call a walnut, because it kind of looks like a walnut. That would be the roosters, and the hens, it's even smaller, and they don't really have much here. So
what does this mean?
So they're not able to use that as a source of cooling as efficiently as these other breeds. Now they can also cool through their feet. Did you already talk about the feet? Or are you
no, I'm going to go into the feet later.
The next one? Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah, so that's just something to think about. Like, why do they have these things on their faces? And that's a really good
the blood. Yeah, the blood flows up there. It's getting exposure to the air. It circulates back into the body. It helps regulate the core body temperature. So the blood's the thermoregulator, really, because you're cooling the blood and this is flowing through the body. Now, the way I always like to think about the wattle, the comb, is I like the little kid stuff. And remember, they always tell you like the dinosaurs had those big fans on their back, and it would change color with the blood. So the blood's flowing up there.
It would get brighter red.
Because they're hot and they're cooling off. And conversely, in the winter, that's where they can get frostbite on those combs because it's exposed directly to the air.
And the long wattles as well.
Yeah, so both of those have to be tended to appropriately. Yeah, so big wattles, big combs help cool. With the silky chickens, we just did a silky chicken. It's in our shorts video. The silky chickens, they don't have those big features, and there's not a lot of surface area for that blood to flow to dissipate some of the heat.
And then with the Silkies, they have a lot of feathering on their face, on their head. And so you'll see some of these layer breeds, their cheeks and such will redden, become more red, and it's the same concept. But the Silkies, they have feathers all over, so they're in a disadvantage in that regard.
Very good. All right, moving on to a very important thing is, Angela mentioned just a second ago, is the blood flow and regulation in the feet and the legs. So this is another important area for heat exchange and heat loss in the hot days, and also where in the wintertime there's something happening down there too. So yeah, these are body parts that aren't insulated. They're exposed out to the air. So they're, what am I saying? The blood... I'm going mental from all the heat.
You're doing fine.
Blood flowing down the legs, of course, going to be exposed to the air outside the body. Now, remember, they're not sweating. You're not having evaporation off the skin like you do with a human being. However, and I'll mention this later, you can assist in the cooling of a bird with a light mist on those legs because that will evaporate. And it will instigate some cooling. The interesting thing, too, about the legs is there's what's called a countercurrent heat exchange or blood flow. So you have arterial blood flowing down, and then right next to it is a intake of blood. So you got the warm blood coming out, being cooled by the blood coming in, and reverse in the winter, you got the hot blood flowing down the leg, warming up the cold blood coming from the outside, if that makes sense. So you have those countercurrent exchanges going on as well in the leg. What else am I talking about in here? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so you could also, you could mist their feet or the ground where they have like a dust bath for helping them to cool down. But yeah.
Yeah, I think misting, like cooling the animal with water, is something you need to do supplementary if you're noticing distress. Because, I mean, the chickens are milling around. You
have to be careful about, not spraying them on the face and even the body. You really want to, because especially if it's humid, that's going to make it difficult for them to cool. So the feet or the ground where they go and dust bathe.
Yeah, if they get wet, that can be quite dangerous because now they're going to be insulating heat because that water is just going to be on their feathers. And people, again, we think of animals in a very human or mammalian way. They're like, oh, I make my chicken happy and put a lot of water on its feathers and they'll be cooler. Because now that water is going to be getting hot because it's not going to evaporate very quickly. And, it'll help cook a bird in the sun. We don't like that. That's not good. So the bird has heat regulatory systems and behaviors that are going to help manage their stress, their heat stress. So, and the big issue and the big thing I want to cover, like we're talking about tonight, is avoiding the heat problems, not treating the heat problems when they happen, because they shouldn't be happening. You can avoid them, but we'll talk about how to treat them if they do. Again, not a vet.
Okay. I can talk about this one because I kind of already did. You just did about the panting.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll notice also if they're pretty warm, their behavior. We kind of mentioned this earlier.
Oh, we're not talking about the panting and gill or fluttering. I guess I did talk about that.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about it?
No, just that when they're panting, it's all of this. It's normal, and not to freak out. Yeah. We have quail, and you can see the quail all the time. They're sitting there going, like, they're respirating this moisture and cooling themselves down. And we notice too, and you guys notice, I don't know if you keep track, if you're working with your birds, you're going to notice this. When hot days, that water jug goes, they drink a lot of water. Our quails will dump out a 5-gallon jug for one of their tanks in a day or a day and a half, where normally it would take several days. Oh yeah, there's more comments popping in here. Let's see. Hi everybody. Hi Verna. I got my I always use this iPad. I can't see my comments right away because it's down on the chair. Katrina, hi hon. I like what Aquatic News says. I agree. Never trust they. Always, I never trust they. Yeah. I hate they. They always.
Yeah, and you're just like, who is?
Everybody's always quoting they. Well, they did a study.
It's just laziness, right. You know what? Yeah.
Let's see here. Filled the terracotta planter tray with water for the birds to walk through. Only saw one walk in it. That's actually a good idea, though. They do cool their feet. Especially if it's out of the sun. You don't want to. Not saying you put it in the sun, but anybody watching any of your water sources, keep them out of direct sunlight, because then they just get really, really hot. And
with having a little access to a foot bath, it depends on personalities. Some of them are more curious and less fearful than others, and are very happy to do that. Use the little foot bath.
Yes. Now, a step right above the foot bath is the dust bath. Oh. So we see our birds are always in the dust.
Yeah, especially with this hot weather we've been having. They've been very active in taking their dust baths, and it does help to get the cool earth, especially having the dust area in a shaded spot, so it's cool. Yeah. So then getting that cool material onto their skin helps. It helps also with declumping or unclumping, I don't know the right word, but just like moving their feathers around. They have any that are clumped. Yeah, so that does help.
Yeah, so these are the behavioral things. So we talked a little bit about the physiological stuff, which not too complicated, but a lot of people don't. I'm not going to say like again, people aren't stupid, but they may not, have heard some of this stuff like the wattles and the dissipation heat. But these behavioral things, I think, are a lot more easy to understand because you see them. The birds rolling around in the dust, fluttering up, getting that cool, like she said, the cool earth on their skin to cool down.
And they might lay on the ground. And it's similar to how when they'll sunbathe, but not quite so spread out with their wings, that they might lay just to get against that ground versus standing periodically.
And they are laying because they don't want to less energy.
Right. But they lay in such a way where they'll lay on their side. It's like they're trying to squash themselves into the ground.
Surface area.
Yes.
Yeah, but be careful. When a bird does overheat or is getting the heat stroke, they may be laying on the ground for that reason.
Well, yeah. So
stumbling around.
You'll notice. So if they're getting pretty warm, another normal behavior for them to do is they'll hold their wings out. Like that, they won't keep them, tucked. They'll hold them out, and that's going to get some wind and some airflow.
Yeah, there's less. You guys know there's less feathers under here
to the skin, and another cooling method.
So letting the air and circulation get to their skin.
You'll see them just not doing a whole lot, just like you when you're super hot outside. The last thing you want to do is start doing a bunch of jumping jacks or running around. You just kind of want to not move, be in the cool shade. And that's what they'll do too. They're not going to want to eat as much. Eating will, that whole digestion process is going to produce heat within them, and they instinctively will know that. So
on the heat days, on the high heat days, if you normally feed in the middle of the day, probably don't
feed
do
them
that.
in the morning. If you can, feed them early morning, and they'll eat a bunch when it's cool. Another alternative is feeding them in the evening. But yeah, so but even if they're fed at a different time, they'll likely eat less food anyway because they're not going to be moving around so much, and they're going to want to drink more water.
I'm looking at this outline I wrote, and we'll add this at the end. I didn't put on any how to keep your chickens cool tips.
Oh, I guess because we just talked about that.
Feather structure is important. So, what?
No, I'm not finished. So,
sorry.
Oh, wait, let me make sure we're not going to cover.
We may cover it.
Oh, yeah. We are going to cover that later.
Give them cucumbers or watermelon is a cooling type food that they love.
Yeah, and even freezing it, they'll enjoy pecking at it frozen.
That's funny. Brenna said, even the adult quail will lay down and appear like they are dead until you touch them. Aquatic news. Whoa, we always called it melting because they look like they melted on the ground. Hey, aquatic news. I got to tell you, I don't know if I told you this in your video. I thought I wrote it. But you guys, you put together some very, very nice thumbnails. His thumbnails are really decent. I mean, and he's got a great niche that he reports on.
Oh, I'll have to.
Yeah, and you got a good niche, and the thumbnails look great. Doing good. Not that I'm an authority on that kind of thing, but I like what I saw. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's most everything. Yeah.
All right, yeah, moving on. So feather structure, like I was mentioning. And again, go see our delightful How to Keep Your Silky Chickens Cool short Angela made. It was really cute. So feather structure is important. So the regular old tight feathers, they're a little more conducive to allowing heat exchange. All right, but the heavier fluffy breeds like Orpingtons, but specifically the Silkies, because everybody wants to keep Silkies. Their feather structure does trap heat in more efficiently, so they're good in the winter, but not that great in the summer, more efficiently than other breeds.
The note about some of the larger breeds, may have a hard time with the heat as well because they have a bigger body. So, yeah, that can affect their cooling.
Yeah. And like we said, the chickens will puff out their feathers to allow the airflow. And you see that. They'll flutter up and get their airflow going. That's just a physiological thing that you guys notice. But again, if you have silky chickens, be aware that they overheat. The feathers is an issue. The feathers are an issue because they lack what's called a barbicel on the shaft, not the shaft, on the barbs of the feathers at the microscopic level, and the barbicel zippers the feather together and gives that tight appearance like on other chickens. The Silkie does not possess it, so it has that Muppet looking fluff. So that feathering style traps heat really well. So Silkies are more prone to overheating under the same conditions compared to other breeds because of their feather structure and the decreased size or the decreased surface area of the comb in their little chicken wattles.
And then their legs are covered in fluff as well. So it kind of, can hinder with the cooling. So these are great chickens to keep in Siberia. They handle the cool well. Yeah, so we do advise, like we said in the video, if you have Silkies or even the Polish, if you can either trim around the eyes or use a band or tape to kind of hold their fluff out of their face during this time so that they don't become disoriented. They can easily see and navigate their area to the shade and water. Yeah. And
Verna left a nice message. Small fans in the coop can help them cool down as well. Yeah, 100% true. Yeah, especially again with their evaporative cooling, and very important keeping circulation in those coops.
Yeah, fans. If you can have fans, that's a great idea.
Not monstrosity fans, not like a windstorm. Like we like windstorms, humans, but not like a super big, super power fan.
They'll adjust, but yeah, circulation is the goal.
Okay, cool. Dehydration and circulatory collapse. Well, I mentioned this briefly a little bit, but the heat increases the loss of all that moisture. They're panting. I don't. Have you seen this? Have you observed this? The amount of water they're drinking on the hot days. Because I mean, I can see that. I can definitely tell they're drinking more.
Yeah.
Especially with the quails. I say quails with an S. I'm going to say quails is.
You can tell that the Silkies are just because their feathers get wet because they keep touching. If they're drinking from like a bowl versus a dripper. Yeah,
I always bring the respiration issue so you can visualize it so it makes more sense. In thinking about like winter time, I always say like when we breathe out, you see that the white cloud. Well, what's that? It's moisture. So every time you speak, every time you breathe, we are always expiring water vapor. The same with the birds. So every time they're going, it's like a little tiny miniature white puffy winter cloud of respiration coming out.
And just like when we talk, right, you get parched.
Yes.
Yeah. But I did want to mention about a little bit more of the detail of the blood because I thought that was really interesting.
Hold on a minute. How do y'all feel about misters that run for only a few minutes? Good idea or a bad idea? That's a great question. So the misters, you can have success with the misters for sure. We do not use them. Misting the bird, you just don't want to have a mister situation, especially in a coop with a coop getting saturated because it's going to be hot. It's going to instigate growth of bacteria and other organisms. So if you have a mister in a coop, that could be a real problem because if you have saturation in their bedding, that's where you have respiratory illnesses exploding in the coop. But yeah, they do help with cooling, particularly on their feet.
On their feet and the dust bath. And it's kind of like, imagine if you're wearing a coat and then it gets wet on the outside. It can kind of create like an insulation, effect. So it's not advisable to mist them on their bodies and face because it could do the opposite of what you want.
Yeah, because the chickens, especially these Silkies, these chickens are trying to ruffle out their feathers to get airflow in there. And if they're sticking together because they're wet and they can't do that, it's going to exacerbate heat.
And then the potential of making the area even more humid can make it a little more difficult for them to naturally cool. But yeah, doing the feet and the dust bathing area, I'm sure they would appreciate that.
I've expired lots of water.
Yes. So yeah, I wanted to mention a little again. Christopher had mentioned about the blood earlier, and I just wanted to go over that point. The
once Never mind.
So with
Never
the
mind.
panting and the evaporation of the fluids, then they can become dehydrated, as Christopher said. And what happens is their blood volume will become reduced.
Yeah, well, the blood's the thing that's doing the work. That's the thing that's thermoregulating, because it's circulating throughout the body, getting outside into the extremities and exchanging the heat. I mean, they're also, of course, respirating to cool off, but the blood also is doing a job. And so if the blood's not flowing well and they're dehydrated, dun dun dun.
Yeah, so the
You're in bad territory.
dehydration, it can thicken. So because of the blood cells are becoming dehydration, it can thicken the blood, which then stresses the organs.
Yeah.
So that's really distressing on the whole body. And then in that situation, that's pretty serious. The bird can perish from circulatory collapse or heat stroke.
We'll deliver quail, or we'll deliver other, like maybe a silky chicken. And we really have to instruct these folks, make sure the little box that you're driving for half an hour with is well ventilated. Well, I'm just saying, even in a short distance, they can overheat because the birds, they have a high body temperature, 104 to 107 degrees. If they're sitting in a transportation box for a short period of time, they're going to get hot. Now, let's just, laterally transfer that analogy or example to the coop. The coop is just it's a box, and it traps heat too. So it really needs to be properly ventilated. And on the hot days, you got all kinds of problems coming up, which we can talk about now. But let me see if we have any more of these really cool comments.
Well, wait. So let me just go over the signs of severe overheating, since I just said like the worst thing that could potentially happen. Like, well, what are the signs? So they're getting warm if their mouth panting, if they're holding their wings up, they're working on cooling themselves and managing their temperature. If you start seeing them closing their eyes, they're getting more fatigued. It's just beginning.
They're like drunks.
It's
drunk
working.
chickens.
Their body's working
Stumbling.
overdrive now, trying to cool. Then they get disoriented, and they'll stumble. I mean, same with us. Like when we have the same situation, we might get a little dizzy and stumble. And then if you see them collapse, like emergency, you have to do something pretty rapidly.
Yeah, I had a heat stroke once, like 15 or 20 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
In my idiocy, I decided to drink an entire pot of coffee, and I was jazzed up.
It was like spring. First,
it was
like
spring,
really hot.
And I love the heat. I do. So I was like, oh, cool. It's like 95 degrees out. I'm going to go for a run. So
Did you have your weight vest?
No, I was just
running.
So I went running in the 95-degree heat.
In the woods.
Yeah, but it was one of those. And my body wasn't even acclimated because it was like early June or so, late May.
It was a fire trail, though.
Yeah, so I suffered what some of the chickens have suffered from this.
So he needed help, and thankfully he got help.
Anyway, I relate. I can empathize with any chickens that are going through heat stress this week because I know it's not comfortable. Okay, Verna said something. An exhaust fan in the coop up high with lower area having an opening will give it good airflow and will cool them down. Yeah, that's a good idea. So it's not directly blowing on them.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the things about severe overheating. I'm going to go into that as a closing.
Okay.
Blah, blah, blah. Practical takeaways and things we can do to keep our chickens cool. Well, we did a lot of stuff in that video we just made. One of the things that we did, and that everybody should do, and we recommend, especially on these hot days, keep the water out of direct sunlight. Put it under the coop. Put a little tent up or something, a shade cover, because that thing's going to heat up, and they're drinking boiling water, and it's just going to heat their body. That water gets hot, so we don't like that. But besides that, at night, get some. I used empty yogurt containers, whatever, some kind of large container, or water bottles. Fill them with water and freeze them. The larger the piece of ice, the longer it's going to maintain being a piece of ice. It's going to stay. I don't want to get into the whole thermodynamics of ice melting, but yeah, So the bigger the piece of ice, the longer it's going to keep that water cool. It's going to take a little longer to melt. And yeah, so keep a couple of those pre-frozen in the freezer at night and drop them in.
You can
in their
freeze
water.
yummy snacks like cucumbers and the watermelons and the berries. You can freeze them in ice in containers with water, so then you can kind of break them up a little bit, and then they can peck at that and they'll enjoy it.
On these hot days, because chickens are respirating and they're losing so much fluid, they're also losing a lot of electrolytes and salts and calcium, etc. It might not be unwise. Wait, is that a double negative? I don't know why I talk like that. It would be wise to maybe consider giving them an electrolyte supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Like chicken Gatorade. That's what I call it.
Yeah, like there's
Save
different
the
products.
Save the chicks. There's all different kinds.
Yeah.
So during heat waves, they do lose minerals because of the respiration, and they're ingesting a lot of water and they're sweating a lot. You've heard this before, I'm sure. Oh yeah, when you're out there and you're working outside all day and you're sweating, you may be getting hydrated, but now you're depleting yourself of minerals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same with the chickens.
Yeah, because you can look on and feel on your skin that salt, that dried salt and stuff that came out.
Would you like to hear a filthy story about what it was like when I was single and I was filthy? So before I got married, I would go out and do all this kind of work, and I'd be covered in sweat and salt. I would just think, I'm not even taking a shower.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go to bed like a bum.
Mm-hmm.
I'd dry off.
Yeah, sometimes he threatens to not take a shower, and I tell him, well,
like a human.
I will put a blanket on the floor and he can sleep on that.
All right, so yes, we talked about electrolyte, ice,
mm-hmm.
deep shade. Go ahead.
Yeah. So deep shade, there is a difference in quality of shade. So deep shade, it's usually dark. It's not, and that it's cooler. The darker, deeper shade, then the cooler it will be, the better quality. So you could create that, by putting something up to.
There can be a 30 or 40 degree temperature difference from shade versus direct sunlight.
Yeah.
It can be a severe temperature difference.
Yeah. You could also, on top of your coops, if it's a dark surface, you can put something white, like a white sheet or tarp, something to reflect the sunlight for the hens going inside there to lay their eggs during the day. And then also to help it not absorb so much heat throughout the day. So then, in the evening, it's
You mentioned the white tarp.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying now.
Yeah, because as Professor Science, we know that white reflects light. So you're going to be reflecting a lot of the solar radiation. So the heat radiation is going to bounce off. And that actually does work. So you may want to do an experiment. Maybe we should do that experiment. But ours are not in direct sunlight. Our coops are shaded, so they have tree shade. But if your coop is in direct sunlight, it would be a good idea to get a large, bright white covering to cover that coop. The brighter, the better, because it's reflecting more light. Why don't they paint human houses with white roofs? I know people talked about it, but
at least here anyway. And then also for hens that are laying, we switched direction.
Oh God. So yeah, we're almost done, but stupid StreamYard does this to us.
But for hens that are laying eggs inside the coop, you could also put in a block of ice near her to help cool her, because that will help cool the immediate area that she's in. Just take care that it's not soaking the bedding.
Wait a minute. Verna said something brilliant. You can get electrolyte for your birds to add to separate water source, not to their usual water. That's right. They need both types of water. Yes. Thank you very much. Aquatic says he doesn't have a south-facing coop. Sorry about this sideways view. Man, the worst part is StreamYard says I should upgrade and pay money.
To prevent that?
No.
Oh, really?
I'm like, Bird Yard, come on, get on the ball here. Stop making me sideways. Well, just close your eyes and imagine we're upright, I guess. I don't know.
But were you going to go? What did you say?
Yeah, I'm finishing up.
I just want to know what you were going to do.
We're talking about if we've noticed. I'm just going to move into the closing here because this is important. If you're noticing again, veterinary care is important. Getting qualified information is important. I'm not giving veterinary advice, but this is in case you're seeing those extreme heat stroke kind of symptoms with your bird. They're stumbling around, eyes are closed, wings are spread.
Collapsed.
And, they're on the ground. They're not responsive. They're not moving. That's an emergency. Well, if they're not responsive, you take them to a vet if you love these birds.
If it happened, if you watched it, it just happened.
Yeah, if it just happened, remove the bird immediately from the heat source. Bring him inside if you can into a cool basement in a shaded area where it's going to be cool. Not cold, because it can shock them. Okay, indoor cool area. Begin gentle cooling, but do not shock them. Again, you don't want to shock these animals. Don't dunk them in the cold water. Don't put cold water all over their body. Use cool water on their legs and feet where they're having that blood exchange. Okay, it's going to help cool them down. And under their wings, you can gently mist or sponge the wattles, the cones, okay, where again that they're having that blood exchange. And if so, or if possible, you could also use a small light fan to get the fan of the evaporation.
Or even just like a firm, for example, a folder, like just fan them to get that, airflow going, because that's going to lift the feathers and get that heat moving away from their body quickly.
Instigate evaporation. So we remove the bird, we begin cooling. Number 3, we're going to rehydrate carefully and slowly. So how do you rehydrate a bird that looks like they're passing out? Do not jam water down their throat with one of those syringes or those baby things we use. Squeezy droppers. Yeah, do not jam water down a bird's throat and get into their lungs. You can drown a bird trying to bring them back. You want to do this because we think, they need water, but it can be damaging. You're going to offer water on the side of their beak so they can do it themselves and get to it. A few drops at a time. Watch for swallowing. If they're not swallowing, don't continue trying to force them. I think we've had, everybody's had kind of experience like this with a sick animal. They're not doing what you want them to do, so you want them to force them. Drink, damn it. But don't force them.
Don't force them.
What you're doing is you're also cooling their body, so they should be hopefully stabilizing, and then they'll instigate drinking. Okay, cool. Stabilize and monitor. Keep the bird calm and monitored. If he starts to become more alert and upright, you can start introducing them to a shaded, quiet area.
Yeah, because that would be very stressful on their body. So a quiet area would be ideal.
And this is important. Continue offering electrolyte for the next 24 to 48 hours, even if they look like they're okay, because they did lose quite a bit of minerals, electrolytes, and sodium, etc., to get in that condition in the first place. However, like I said, if it's a big emergency and you're caring about this bird, bring them off to the vet. So seek veterinary intervention at the sign of illness or injury with any of your animals, and seek professional care. All right, summary of this. What are we doing during these severe instances? We're moving them to a shaded area. Number 2, gently wetting or cooling off their wings, legs, and combs. Cool water, not cold. Just don't want to shock them. 3, we can lightly fan them to instigate evaporation cooling. 4, we can offer the water, sips of water from our dropper to the side of the beak, and see what's hopefully they start drinking. And 5, monitor and rehydrate once they're in that recovery stage. So hopefully we don't get to that. Unfortunately, this week, I've seen several people who've had this problem, man. And that's that.
Yeah, I think this is interesting too. I think we should...
How heat affects egg production. Yeah, we can mention that because everybody's like, why are my quail not laying eggs, or why are my birds not laying eggs? Heat can reduce egg production due to hormonal disruption. Yes, hormonal disruption in the heat. Well, you're thinking about it. These birds are stressed, so heat is a stressor. Their bodies and their physiology is changing around for survival and resource allocation, and they're trying to keep their resources and don't want to lose anything. So laying eggs isn't as important as not overheating to death.
Right.
So, but eggs are still important because we like to eat them. But in particular, the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Not that you care or want to know that, but I did look that up and I thought that was interesting. So dehydration reduces calcium absorption. Dehydration is going to decrease calcium absorption and shell quality. It's going to decrease a lot of functions physiologically speaking.
So the shells might be thinner.
But in this context, the shells are going to be affected. And
your roosters may not be as
fertile.
Yeah.
For extended heat periods. don't have a. Okay, all right, cool. All right, I was just checking for any other comments. Sorry about turning sideways. Like I said, StreamYard, I don't know why this duck does this. I do not like this duck, but I like some of the other features. So I guess that's that. I think this is really good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it's so hot. So you guys, yeah, definitely this coming week, I think it's going to be cool again now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be
here.
It's going to be hot later in another couple weeks. We're going to have more heat waves come through. It's just what happens. So you want to proactive. People like to use that word. Be proactive in preventing overheating in your flock. You guys care about your birds. So the people who watch us, at least I'm assuming, and from what I know, they're small farm people, homestead people who cherish their animals and their family members and pets. They don't want them overheating and croaking. They're not like, well, I'll get some more from the store. No, they care about the animals.
And something else I mentioned on the other video, for broody hens, because it's not just Silkies, lots of different types of hens for broody. If they're not on any eggs, then discourage them from being in the coop, lock them out of the coop, in fact, and they can lay their eggs on the ground. Because she can perish, she can overheat in the coop like that because she's against that bedding, and it's just going to make her hotter and hotter and hotter. And if she is on eggs, then you can put a thing of ice maybe in a container of some sort next to her or near her, like a big thing of ice, and that'll help cool her immediate area. So
very good. Verna said, "Thank you. This is very informative." Thank you, Verna.
Yeah, thanks.
Taco is in the house.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Taco. Thanks for stopping in. Yeah, I guess you're far away. I'm assuming you're in Texas, since you're Taco, Texas. Here, we start this at 9 p.m. on the East Coast.
Eastern Standard Time.
Which anywhere else is going to be kind of early because people are doing stuff. But we start at 9 now because the sun goes down at 9.
You have to put away the critters and...
Yeah, we're doing like the Amish. They don't start their lives until 9. It's a joke. The Amish, I don't think you got it. We live in a very Amish area. All right. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Austin. Oh, right. Austin, Texas. Very nice. I think that was the fastest growing city in the United States for like 3 years straight. It's a very popular and sought after area. Okay. I think this was good. This was good information. Sometimes I'm not really satisfied with these lives. Like, it could have been better. But I think this is good information and got to the point, and it was applicable. It was useful information. It wasn't just stuff you already knew over and over again.
There's a lightning bug in
Some of the stuff you already knew. But guys, we appreciate it. We are currently sideways. Not my fault. I'm blaming the duck up there in the corner. I guess it's... I can't even look on. I can't even put on the screen. It's on the upper side.
Anyway,
it's that duck's fault. Appreciate you coming in. If you're new here and you found this information useful and you feel so inclined, feel free to subscribe. I like having a community of good humans. I like to give good information, and I don't think the internet should be a waste of space. I really do believe that. We have an ability to grow and learn, and all this information is free. So we should encourage to do that. I always talk about people waste time on the internet, so there should be some community where we can learn, grow, share information, etc. All that good stuff. Anyway, thanks for stopping in.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching.
I'm going to go sweat in a bed and say good night to everybody. Good night, Taco. DFW area here. Wait a minute. DFW area. What is DFW area? I know what that is. Are you still there? Aquatic News. What is DFW? Delaware something. The only word I know with F I'm not going to mention here. I'm only kidding. I don't know what DFW area is. Dallas Fort Worth. Oh. She's not from there. Yeah, now I feel dumb. All right. Awesome. Okay, cool. See?
Thank you, guys.
Makes sense.
Thanks for the clarity.
All right. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you. Thank you, Taco. Okay. Well, hell. I ought to start eating steak in here. What do you guys in Texas do? I got to do my Texas stuff up here. I've always thought about moving down to Texas.
Not
I'm
really.
a Texas kind of guy. All right.
Okay, well, have
Have
a
a
wonderful
great
rest of
night,
your day.
everybody. Please stay cool, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much for coming in.
Bye.